joining us. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We're just talking about the past snowstorms, the present snowstorm. We get lulled into a false sense of security over the past couple of winters. This is February, so it's best to have it now. I think we had some snowstorms in late March when we were really done with winter. So hopefully it's a couple of storms and then we get into the spring. So this evening, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining us. We will have our February budget presentation, as well as the superintendent's report. And there are two opportunities for questions. Roman numeral 5 is on the agenda, and at the end is questions with regards to topics that you would like to bring to the board's attention that are appropriate for the board to deal with. This evening, as we have done, if you have a question, please use the chat system on Zoom, present your question with your name. Steve will assist me in coordinating those questions and reading those questions, and let's get started. Gordon, you want to start with your budget presentation?
Yes, thanks, Bob. First. Okay. Speaking of storms, we're watching one brewing, so to speak. We gave January our first meeting last month, first budget meeting. This is February, our second, but they're a relatively small part of the budget. But before we get to the big one next month in March, which contains salaries and benefits, it's good to put a few factors out there, and that's why I'm saying it's a storm. Every year we do the budget this time, present it, and let me take us back a year when Linda and I created the 2021 budget. We had no idea in February, we did in March, that we would see a thing called COVID, a pandemic would shut down schools. But as you know, we finished the budget in April and it's approved in May. Last year's budget, we did not include COVID money. We thought and planned for opening normal. But what all of us saw happen throughout the summer and even the fall, we saw the governor saying, if you want to open, you have to do this. The Department of Health, if you want to open, you have to do this. The CDC, sometimes contradicting one another. But long story short, we had to settle and put aside money with the board's approval, $2 million for anticipated expenses. A lot of that went for additional staff because we couldn't have everyone back, shields, ventilation, construction, a number of things. That's $2 million. And now we find out last month, a few weeks ago, that the governor has decided to cut our aid by another $2 million. So when you look at that COVID money and the $2 million that right now presently is cut, that's $4 million. If that $4 million was added to the fund balance, Bob, the fund balance would be standing at 7.4%, yes, above the state for allowable percent, but instead of 2.6. Now, what the board would wisely do is use that extra money to make the improvements that are so badly needed on our 3 buildings. It's been a number of years since our bond hasn't been successful, and those repairs are still there. You know, we had to prioritize them going out a few years. Some this year, they may have to be put on hold if we can't afford to do them and we have to make cuts. But again, as we go through these next few months, we will be seeing a more realistic picture like we do every year of our budget based on state aid. And I remind everyone, the first week of April is when reality strikes and we find out what our real aid is. However, we know the governor is asking the president for $15 billion. He was asking President Trump for the money for New York too. And here's the thing, Should he get money, you don't know if he's going to keep some, if he'll distribute it, how much we will get. And if he says, all right, I'm going to give it in the form of foundation aid, I've said many times, Mount Sinai does not benefit from foundation aid. We are an average wealth district, not below average. So we won't see much of that. We don't know how much you get back of that 2 million that we need for next year. If you get it right away, a little bit each year for 5 years, you have no way of knowing. So our audience, our community has to realize we had to get our kids back to school, which we wanted to do, and we're still moving through phases to get them back in school. We had to put mandated, unfunded mandated things in place for COVID. We continue to do that. And we may have a little bit of that 2 million left, but not much as we keep spending through phase 4 and perhaps phase 5. And again, not knowing how that aid might come back. So that's 4 million we didn't want to spend and lose. And that I wanted to get up front before I proceed.
Gordon, could I add in at that point?
Sure.
It's important to recognize the fund balance we've often talked about as the rainy day fund. This is what it was for. When something unforeseen came to us, we were able to address that. We've spent more than 3/4 of the $2 million that we moved over for COVID, ranging from construction, as Gordon has indicated, to staffing, to PPE, and we are presently going to be spending additional monies towards other safety issues that are necessary for us to do any type of instruction or expansion of instruction. But that has had effect. We don't anticipate coming into this year that we will provide funds into a capital reserve. We have always had, except for 2 years, in my tenure, we've had 2 years that we didn't have a capital reserve. We always had a capital reserve in the past. We created one again 3 years ago, where we fund that so that we can use our tax dollars that you are already providing towards our renovations. And we've done a great deal of the renovations. It's never ending, like any other homeowner or building owner. We are now at the point where we are not able to, as we can see, add back into our capital reserve. That also affects our consideration of some of the items that we were thinking about pre-COVID. There really is 2 different times presented. Pre-COVID, if I can remind you, our intent this year was to start discussing funding for and what would be necessary for the movement of 5th grade down to the elementary school, where frankly, we have thought it has belonged, and what construction was necessary to accommodate that. We also have some major capital repairs as well as general repairs, some of which you never really see because they're background repairs, steam fitting type repairs, large plumbing repairs, things like that, that are not really maintenance, but are complete renovations. We also have had to look at how, and it affected our ability in the high school, how we can accommodate our students in the science and technology rooms and art rooms. They're outdated, they're not up to technology. We would have changed and renovated those, certainly the technology room, towards a more up-to-date type of elective room, as well as the classrooms of the science wing. These are things that are going to be affected going forward. This is dollars and cents, and I don't want you to get misled by what Newsday says. Newsday didn't contact us. Newsday didn't even include us in the list of schools on their wow list of schools losing $1 million. We're looking at $2 million. We're not on their radar. It is likely we will get some of this state money back, but I think it should be thought of as our past experience. The state does not turn around and send you your money back. State aid does not come back the day we spend it. It takes time to get it back. There are times we're waiting 3, 5, 10 years for it. Just look at the Smart Schools and Smart Bond Act. We still don't have all the money that we spent that was approved that hasn't come back from the state. It's a shell game. And you as community members have to know that and have to acknowledge that as how your schools are funded. Your state does not fund your schools in a, in my opinion, a fair and equitable manner.
Okay.
Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you, Bob. All right, Ken, thanks. You have the first slide up. This was last month's January's presentation and the topics we discussed. And that's on the website if anyone wants to go through that in detail. Ken, would you change to this month's? Next slide, please. All right, tonight, February, we're talking about instructional areas. That's the principals and the directors, pupil personnel and special education, guidance and ancillary areas. Next slide, Ken. Last month in January, we presented 12% of the budget. Tonight is 10%, again, another small piece of the pie. Next month in March, you're going to see a much larger piece of the pie when we get into salaries and benefits. But still, in February, in this 10%, you're going to see some important information. Ken, please. All right, curriculum and development, research, in-service, professional development for our teachers, training. This is Dr. Timo's area. The conversation here mainly is you'll see contractual, which jumped, go to the last line, and BOCES that went down. We simply moved that money. That money moved from BOCES to contractual, and I'll explain why. Last year, we presented the same thing that we wanted to do. We wanted 5th grade Columbia reading. Now we have K through 5 Columbia writing. It matches perfectly with the reading program, but right now that exists in K through 4 only. Because we had to cut $150,000 immediately in last year's budget, 5th grade did not get Columbia reading. It may still have to be cut. We don't know. We'll know in the next few months, but that additional money is for Columbia Teachers College reading program and professional development to teach our teachers and get them familiar with it in the 5th grade. That's primarily that slide. But again, we'd love to have it. It matches with the writing program. 5th grade should have it, needs it, but we may, and Bob will tell you, you're not going to get it all back. You don't know when you're going to get that aid back. This may have to be cut again. I hope not. Ken, next slide, please.
Just to add, Gordon, that the Columbia reading program is a high priority, particularly for the board. There may be some other areas. Look, we're being very realistic in our conversation tonight.
Right.
We don't teach anymore to learn to read. We read to learn. Everything from K all the way up is a reading process, and the Teachers College program, which complements our writing program, is so crucial to the development of our students' skills, not necessarily just in 5th grade, but how they will perform in 9th grade and how they'll perform in 11th grade. These are going to be important issues that we look at as we go forward. The community needs to know this is where we stand in a workshop level until we get to April, as you saw last year. And as Gordon alluded to, in February, we were presenting a budget that completely changed in March. Now that was driven by COVID, but we will be looking at some of those issues. And in the end, it's the students' needs that will take priority over other issues. And this is a high priority item because of the impact it has in the overall reading program and the ability to learn from elementary school on up into the secondary level.
Right. And if I can remind you, probably 5 or 6 years ago when we wanted to bring Columbia writing, my English background, 32 years, always familiar with writing programs. We had no formal writing program in the elementary school, which kind of alarmed me. And the board and I agreed we need to build the foundation, make a stronger foundation in our elementary school for our students as they grow into the middle and high school. And we felt a writing program, and there are a lot of naysayers, doubters, that how can you start kindergartners, first graders writing? Well, you can, and they did. But the writing program alludes to many of the reading pieces that are located in the Columbia reading program. So, Bob, you said it again like I did. They go hand in hand. We'd love to get it through the 5th grade. Thank you. Can you put up the principals' building budget? So I want to thank all the principals. This is kind of a theme now where there's money going down versus budgets going up. And the principals work pretty hard with this. The conversation here is they have a lot of things they need already. They planned well. We do have some things in here that are in red that we're considering doing. But I want to point out one thing. Our one-to-one initiative, laptop initiative, and grades 9 through 12 will happen next year. And Pete's added some things that make sense. And those are the tables, charging tables that we want to locate around the high school. We're going to have almost 800 students with laptops. I think that would be, that's a useful suggestion. Then there's a little bit in co-curricular that went up $1,000, but nothing much. Again, we're looking at the air systems of some of our rooms, but a lot of that was done this year. So the principal was able to come in at $20,000 lower. Ken? Andy Matthews, the director of math, science, and technology. Andy was slicing and dicing and did a good job also. Planned when he needed books. There aren't great needs in that area. He cut by $32,000. And, you know, a lot of it is just small purchases like workbooks, AP books, things like that, but nothing big. Shed materials for the technology class, but he came in at $32,000 lower. Thank you, Andy, for doing that. And as Bob mentioned, we do want to move forward with technology. Our rooms in our high school, the science rooms, lab rooms, are very old, poorly designed, and our technology room is a shop room in all essence. And we'd like to move that forward as well. But we're working the best we can with what we have. So thank you, Andy, for coming in low. Ken, next page, please. All right. Again, our new director of humanities, foreign language, in ESL, Bridget DePrimo, came in 17.5 lower than last year. But there is a conversation here on this page. And that is, the main focus is a 5th grade social studies book that's online, has workbooks for the students. Our 5th grade book is over 20 years old. I haven't seen my son come home with a social studies book yet. It doesn't even have the Twin Tower disaster. So I think we need to bring our students up to date. We do want to place more emphasis in elementary on social studies. It's a needed book, but we're purchasing it and training for teachers, and we're still coming in under last year's budget. Ken, next page, please. And here's Scott Ray, who may be on, and we always beat him up, but Scott came in. He doesn't ask for anything anymore. He comes in at the 0 and always complies and understands what our budget is like, and he's kept everything the same as last year. And I'd like to thank Scott for doing that. Next page, please. Okay, here we have another new director / AP, Christina Romeo, 20-year art teacher, now has moved into Larry Roberts' place and doing the budget and did a nice job taking over from Larry. Larry always tried to plan year to year. What do we need? And he got a lot of books and things last year that were needed, and he put Christina in pretty good shape. Christina saw the increase in art classes. Quite a few sections were added, but we had the materials to handle that. And we think also our money's going down in the music area because less parents are renting. We don't have to rent as many instruments in school because parents are purchasing instruments for their kids. At a higher level, you would probably see that anyway. But we did see that the rental fees are down, and they didn't need any books. They were already purchased prior. So we're in pretty good shape in those areas as well. Next page. This page is like the first one where we wanted money for the 5th grade Columbia Reading Program. But I say every year that we do not dictate a special education budget. We don't tell them the money. Whatever the population may be on a particular year drives the budget. And whatever goes into the children's needs, it's determined by the Committee on Special Education. They tell us in the IEP what all the kids need. We give that to them, and that drives our cost. So based on our population, you can see we have an increase of 177,000 based on the needs determined by the Committee on Special Education. So that's the second page of a hike. Next page, Ken, please. Okay, in guidance, again, a small cut, not a tremendous one, but we're doing something differently. And Linda and Matt and others planned it last year. We moved Power School, our student ID system, to BOCES, because BOCES constantly upgrades the systems they used, which accommodates what the state, New York State, demands from us as far as data. So we just thought it'd be more compatible to put our Power School with BOCES and let them update it regularly so that happens more smoothly. And that money was already set aside, and we're saving $6,000. Now, again, like the other pages, special education, and the first one down below, and you got to listen carefully for this BOCES occupational educational page. BOCES charges us on a 3-year average attendance. Now, initially, we had less than 10 kids going, very few, and thus we formed a 3-year average at a pretty low cost. Lately, primarily special education kids with some gen ed kids who want to go to BOCES, we are up to like 17 or 18 students. The former 3-year average has expired. Now we have a new 3-year average, and we're sending more kids. So that average is higher, and you'll see below. Now, that's a jump from the last 3 years, but the thing is, that will stay at that level for 3 years, even if we send a few more kids. But that's why there's a hike there. The way BOCES works, the 3-year average of cost and how many students we send. Okay.
On the BOCES, Gordon, what we're seeing is it's a very rigorous process for a general ed student to enter into the OCED program at BOCES.
Good point. Yes, it is, Bob.
They have to apply. They have to have certain grade requirements. They still maintain, and we have some OCED students who are also accommodating AP classes. They then at BOCES, they have to accept them, and their rigors are imposed at BOCES. This is not a, oh, let's move some students over there. What we're seeing is some very serious students who want to explore other avenues of education in terms of career training that fits within their needs, and we're being able to accommodate that. I think it's a very important part of our budget, particularly how BOCES is doing it. It's allowing a member district, which we are, to accommodate increases in three-year periods. So yes, we are seeing a $48,000 increase, but for a period of time, we've had students enter this program over the last 3 years, and we will not have another increase for another 3 years. So we can plan for that and provide for the students who have an interest, who have a passion in this area.
Well said. And there are more, you know, we've done it gradually, and you're right. They must meet our own Mount Sinai standards to be admitted and BOE standards as well to be admitted to that program. Okay, Ken? As we always say every year, these are self-sufficient programs, adult ed. There's a slight savings because there won't be as many classes run online, of course, not in person. And driver's ed is, I got to give Elizabeth Hine a lot of credit, able to get that still going with COVID. It's been a challenge, but that does not cost the district any money. Parents pay for that. Community members pay for that. Ken?
It says, going back to that slide, it's a zero-sum game in adult ed and driver's ed, but it does take up $81,500 of our expenditure budget. So when in the end, we have a percentage and there's a percentage of change or a percentage of increase or decrease, $81,500 is taken up in our expenditure budget. It's not like it's somewhere else separately. If this was truly a zero-sum game, it wouldn't affect our budget in any fashion. But the way the budget works for a school district, we have to accommodate it within our budget. And at the end of the year, we'll be paid for it. But $81,500 is used up of our budget of the cap of the total amount.
Thank you, Bob. All right, Ken, the summary page, please. All right, I mentioned the conversation, not going into each category. The curriculum development went up because of our desire to include Columbia Reading Program for the 5th grade for the materials and professional development. The second category that is causing the rise in our budget is the special education, but again, depends on the needs of the students, what is determined by the Committee for Special Education. That drives the budget. Then we just reviewed, and Bob summed it up for BOCES Occ Ed. We have, instead of 7, 8, 9 students going, we have the average now of 17, 18 kids going, and it provided us with a new 3-year average, which will stay the same for 3 years, but it is a hike right now. Now you add those 3 categories up, and the raises in those categories, that results in the hike on the bottom, very bottom line increase in February's budget by $226,820, primarily driven by those 3 categories. Ken? So the big picture, and again, we have March and April to go. January was 12% of the budget. This month, February is 10. So we're about at a quarter of the budget. But the most expensive piece is coming next month. We will know more factors, information about our state aid and what we hear. I hope we hear good things. No one likes to cut, but we are facing reality. We didn't plan on $2 million for COVID. The governor always hit us, but we didn't count on a $2 million cut, $4 million total. So the remaining categories are on the right. And flip the page, please, Ken. And we summarize again. Went up 17,000 last month, 226,820 this month. That's what we have so far. And next month, Ken, slide change, last one. Operations, maintenance, grounds and security, athletics, that's big, salaries and benefits. So that's the tough one. We'll see where we are. We'll have more information for our community, hopefully on what our state aid and what our budget is really looking like. Thank you, Ken. Bob?
Bob is muted.
Yep, sorry. At least I don't have a cat filter.
Yeah.
Let's take any questions we have on the agenda so we keep it in order, and then we'll do approval of the minutes after that. Any questions, Steve, on the agenda?
First one from Monica Stone requesting that the budget presentations be put onto the website for future review.
Sure, that's easy.
Okay, Brad Arrington asked related to the budget, where is the district in regard to expectation of minimum days and state aid due to not enough instructional days?
Okay, as a community heard loud and clear, we applied for the budget last year. Linda and I have been calling weekly. BOCES is helping me out. They actually contacted the state for me. And BOCES seems to feel it would be positive, but I need it in writing and I didn't get the waiver yet. So I'm still focusing on instructional hours. I reluctantly, but had to use a delayed opening Monday morning. You're familiar with those, Steve. And I'm really reluctant to even have to think about it tomorrow, but I have to think about it tomorrow. So, and Linda will remind me again to check in with Dave Wicks if I don't remember at the end of this meeting to write him and say, Dave, I want my waiver. I want it in my hand. Hopefully we will get that and we can relax a little bit on this, but you must understand, and we have a lot of school people out there and they get it. If you don't meet the day, we have 181 days right now because we use 2 remote days. If you go below 180, you're in trouble. If you go below 990 hours in secondary and 900 on the elementary level, you are in trouble. We're fine on the elementary level. The secondary level is we're riding it very tight. So if I get that waiver, I will announce it to the community and make them aware of that. But right now, I'm still extremely nervous about saying anything about a snow day or delayed open because those are hours we're not open. A 2-hour delay is a safe thing to do, but it's 2 hours off our total of 990.
Okay, we have a funding question from Monica Stone. Were we eligible for any money from the CARES Act last spring for COVID-related expenses?
Yes, we did get, well, we just got approved for $218,000, which we budgeted and we're using to buy computers for the students.
Okay.
To help us with our one-on-one initiative.
Karen Pitka asked about the waiver. I believe you've answered all of her question as well. Tara Cilio, was there any money that was saved from not having spring sports last year and this year with a modified sports schedule?
So last year, the money went to fund balance. So yes, there was money left over. And that's why we were able to pay for some of the COVID expenses.
Next question was from Karen Pitka. What reading and writing program are grades 6 through 8 using?
Karen, I'll have the director send you all of that because some things are changing right now. So if Karen, if you don't mind, I'll have Bridget DePrimo get a hold of you.
Okay, Jennifer Holmes asked the cost of extending the Columbia programs.
I think $8,000.
And I think this one's actually for later on. It's related to senior activities and stuff. We can discuss that at the other half of the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
Let's move on to number 4, approval of the minutes. Anne Marie, would you take that?
Sure. Approval of the minutes. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the minutes of the January 20th, 2021 regular meeting as submitted.
Second.
May I have a second? Thank you. Any comments? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Vote is carried. Skipping down to Roman numeral 6, personnel appointments, substitute teachers. Lisa?
Appointments, personnel, substitute teachers. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointments. Elizabeth Lajaro Deloro, employment date February 4th, 2021, substitute teacher. compensation $175 per day. And Lori DiMuccio, employment date of February 4th, 2021, substitute teacher, compensation $175 a day.
Thank you, Lisa. May we have a second?
Second.
I'll second that.
Any comments? All in favor? Indicate
Aye.
by aye. Aye.
Aye.
Ed, would you please take number 2 in that?
Office assistant part-time. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following part-time appointment for Jennifer Pignatello, effective February 22nd of 2021. As an office assistant, she's currently an aide. Compensation is step 1 at 5 hours a day.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lisa.
May I just jump in a second? We're losing a very good aide right there, and we've been losing it. You could recall, Bob, every month we have aides resigning, retiring, and we have a shortage right now. So if some people know, good people in the community might be interested, particularly in the elementary school, we need aides and aide substitutes. They're very hard to come by right now. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Gordon. Rob, did you want to indicate to the clerk your abstention?
Yes, I will abstain, please.
Thank you. Any other comments? All in favor indicate aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Vote carries. And my page cut off, so I'm assuming it's
Number 3.
number 3. If you don't mind, you want to take that one, Rob?
Yes, school district aides. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointments. Name of employee, Madison Napolitano. Employment date 1/28/21. School district aide, step 1. Pina Pramataris. Employment date 2/11/21. Substitute aide. Compensation $14 an hour.
Thank you, Rob. May I have a second?
I second.
Second that.
Thank you. Any comments? All in favor indicate aye.
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 Thank you very much. Coaches, number 4. Anne Marie?
Okay, coaches, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following coaching appointments for the 2020-2021 school year as listed.
Thank you. May we have a second?
Second.
Just a comment or a question, Gordon or Lisa. Is the winter 2020-21 prorated? It's not listed in the language of the, this is a very short season. I don't assume that I would approve or the board would approve a full season when it's less than 4 weeks.
I don't know if Maureen wants to answer. I can answer. They were prorated, Bob. One lasted 4 weeks, one 8, as you said. We feel the right thing that must be done is to pay half the pay to the 4-week coaches and full pay to the 8-week coaches. Maureen, do you want to add anything?
Yes, he gave you. Maureen, you're muted.
I think it says prorated on the side, does it not?
It does.
It does say prorated.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't even remember. I think they're all.
Any other questions with regards to the appointments? All in favor indicate aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Takes us all the way over to the next page, down at the bottom, number 5, clubs and advisors. Pete?
Number 5, clubs and advisors. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby authorizes the following co-curricular clubs and appoints the persons listed below as advisors for the 2020-21 school year as listed.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Pete. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any comments? All in favor indicate aye.
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 Aye. Most of all of these are related to the proposed drama program that will be a musical that will be presented. A lot of work has gone into this to do it safely There's a lot of complex parts to allow it to be done in this COVID era, and very proud of those advisors who are putting this together for the students and the performance that they'll be involved in. So I'm very proud of all of them. And action items, Roman numeral 7, Committee on Special Education. Steve?
Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education has no objections to the following special education recommendations. Approves the authorization for the funds to implement the special education programs and services consistent with such meetings as listed below.
Thank you, Steve. May I have a second?
Second.
Just some comment. What Gordon often speaks about is that we're driven by, this is really what drives the budget every month. We have some planning ahead, but the recommendations of the committees define what the budgets are. We do a yearly budget based on input from them, but this is what really drives it. May I have a voice vote of aye in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Okay. Action items, business, Roman numeral 8. Lisa?
Action items, business, phase 4, reopening plan. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby authorizes the emergency purchase of desk shields in an amount not to exceed $140,000 and for expenses involved in social distancing needs in an amount not to exceed $70,000 as part of our 2020-2021 phase 4 reopening plan.
Thank you, Lisa. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor indicate aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Vote carries. Lisa, would you mind moving on to obsolete equipment so we can eliminate that?
Sure. Obsolete equipment. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby declares the following items as obsolete and authorizes disposal as listed.
Thank you, Lisa.
Second.
May I have a second on that?
Second.
Thank you, Rob. Any comments? All in favor indicate aye.
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 Ed, would you please take number 3, Board of Education committees?
Board of Education Committee. Resolved upon the Board of Education. Resolved the Board of Education hereby establishes the following advisory board committees for the 2020-21 school year. Strategic Curriculum Program Committee consisting of Robert Sweeney as chairperson, Lisa Pfeffer and Edward Law, and the Wellness, Health, and Safety Committee consisting of Robert Sweeney as chairperson, Anne Marie Henninger, and Peter Van Midlam.
Thank you, Ed. May I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Pete. Any comments? All in favor indicate aye.
Aye.
Aye. And number 4, policy gender neutral bathroom facilities. Pete?
Number 4, policy gender neutral bathroom facilities. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the first reading of the following gender neutral bathroom facilities policy. The Mount Sinai Union Free School District Board of Education, under the authority of education law, section 409-M, directs that the superintendent of schools and or his designee provide for the designation and the appropriate signage indicating the status of all single occupancy bathroom facilities district-wide to be gender neutral and to be utilized by no more than one occupant at a time or for family or assisted use. The Board of Education recognizes and supports the public policy inherent within the subject statute in seeking to accommodate constituencies which do not identify with a binary gender designation, but rather which identify with a chosen non-binary gender identification. And further, to assure that families and those requiring physical assistance are enabled to utilize facilities that will no longer be earmarked for use by a sole specific gender. It is determined that gender segregated laboratory facilities do not serve a useful purpose in accommodating the interests of those present on district premises. It is recognized that in consideration of the comfort and safety of individuals who do not identify with the male or female gender, and those families and those requiring physical assistances necessitating mixed genders utilizing laboratory facilities, that the district will be affording a greater opportunity to those who would otherwise be regulated to having to avoid the use of a designated male and female single occupancy bathroom facilities. It is the intent of the Board of Education to afford accommodations that do respect diversity and non-binary gender selections, as well as families and those requiring physical assistances in utilizing bathroom facilities in district buildings. This policy is to be implemented no later than March 23rd, 2021. As such is the effective date of this subject, section 409-M of the New York State Education Law. The policy is to be generated under the auspices of the subject statute and within discretion of the Board of Education to manage, oversee, and supervise facilities of the district.
Thank you, Reed. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Second that.
Thank you. Any comments? All in favor indicate aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Rob, would you please do number 5, the town exemptions?
Granting of the town of Brookhaven exemptions for 2020-2021. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby grants the following exemptions. RP 467, partial exemption for seniors, local options 1, 2, and 3. RP 459C, limited income disability exemption, local options 1, 2, and 3. RP 458A, alternative veterans exemption, local options 1, 2, 3, and 4. RP 458, Cold War veterans exemption, local options 1, 2, and 3. And RP 466C, fire ambulance workers exemption, local options 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? I'll just add 458A, 458 to our veterans in our community. Thank you for your service, of course. Please review these options because there are multiple options based on your service and where you would fit in. And it's best that you review that. And if you have questions, speak with the town so that you get the proper exemption that you're entitled to. Any other comments? All in favor indicate aye.
Aye.
Madam Secretary, please denote my abstention from number 5 and as an affirmative response to the first 4 selections.
And the same for me.
Will do. Okay.
Thank you. Vote carries. Number 3, district operational plan. Anne Marie.
Okay. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the district operational plan for public health emergencies involving communicable diseases, which will be posted on our website.
Bob, would you like to
have a second?
Sorry.
First, we'll get a second. Thank you, Lisa. Any comments, Gordon?
You want me to describe what that is for the folks at home?
Yes, please. Rather than read the whole thing.
Yeah, okay, but I did take some notes on it, so bear with me. It's actually, the full title is Operational Plan for Public Health Emergencies Involving Communicable Diseases. That's a mouthful right there. Last September, past Labor Day, Governor Cuomo signed legislation that requires all New York State employers like us to adopt a plan for operations in the event of a declared public health emergency involving a communicable disease like we have now. The new law requires that the Department of Labor will establish an online portal for public employees to report violations of health and safety rules for communicable diseases. Our plan is finalized to be posted on the website by April 1. Now, every year, we upgrade our safety plans in each one of the buildings. Now, those existing plans must include protocols for responding to a declared public health emergency involving a communicable disease. Now, what's in it is, I'll just, bullet them. We had to list and describe all positions and titles considered essential, and we had to justify for clarifying each position as essential. Then we had to include protocols the employer will follow in order to enable non-essential workers to telecommunicate or work remotely, including we had plans to obtain laptops and phone lines. Does that smell like an unfunded mandate to somebody? Does to me. Then the next bullet is a plan describing how the employer will stagger work shifts of essential employees and contractors so you don't have overcrowding at work sites. Also included, distribution of personal protective equipment, PPE, for essential workers, gloves, masks, face shields. Then finally, a protocol outlining what happens in the event employees exposed to the communicable disease, exhibit symptoms, tests. We will have all of that in place in our COVID policies. And then when it was finished, each union head had to read it, critique it, upgrade it, and they've done that already. So ours is really ready to go, and thus the board is voting on it tonight. And it'll be posted April 1.
Thank you, Gordon. Having that explanation, some of the information, a lot we have prepared ahead of time back in starting in May of last year and developing through a committee some of these procedures, PPE procedures, some of them not required, and we did anyway. Was somewhat shocking, some of the things that were not required that we thought were important. So we're well ahead of the game in terms of that as we go forward. Let's take a vote. All in favor indicate by aye.
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 Vote carries. That concludes our agenda. Steve, any general questions?
Just a few. One we left from before. Plans for the end of the year activities, senior day, graduation, proms, etc.
I think that might be better to inquire directly with the principal. I know he and I have spoken about a proposed prom. We would like things to look as normal as we can. Bob Sweeney and I have talked about what things could we do outdoors. We challenged the middle school and high school to think about that. That includes concerts, by the way. But perhaps award celebrations, graduation is still a question. We know how we can do it. We know how we'd like to do it. You know, some of the regulations have changed since last year, but it's a question about the catering halls. Let me just dwell on the prom for a second. Some think it's just weddings and celebrations like that, not necessarily a school dance. Now I'll throw that at you and say, why is that? Well, if you're not allowed to have music and dancing, how is that a prom? There's a large buffet at a catering hall with half the people. I'm not sure. So, you know, all is still being debated. Pete is looking into what he can do, but they're trying to be as creative as possible to give our seniors more than what our kids lost last year. So we want that for everyone. Hopefully our numbers will go low. Hopefully the vaccines will help, and hopefully June might look differently.
Okay, from Brad Arrington, what is the purpose and expected output of the two new committees formed?
I can address that. The Strategic Planning and Curriculum Committee looks at our curriculum as a whole. We make determinations. For example, in the past, we have looked at the reading and writing program that was in place, and the board, we fund all of these things, but we also like to get information so we do it properly. And that's where a number of years ago, we began the process of introducing the Teachers College program. Another example is what was discussed in terms of the technology side in what was once woodshop and where we were heading with that. And that ended up recommendations to the administration that when they were looking to hire, that they did so with staff that may have CTE background. The result of that was we were able to hire a culinary, a teacher who teaches in home and careers, but she also has a culinary background that could develop either in a small way or in a large way, a CTE program. The same thing was driven by our need to improve our in-house technology so that we hire staff that can accommodate plans going into the future. So that's what that program and that curriculum committee does. The other committee is required by the state. It actually comprises different pieces. One of them is our nutrition committee. We've had, I'll just give you my experience. I've attended lunch with students over the past 10 years and joined them for lunch, sometimes announced, sometimes not announced, to see what we're being presented with, what the food is. By the way, the salad fair, certainly not in 2020, I didn't go in the spring, but in the past was some of the nicest salad bar I've ever been to, by the way. I'll just put that out there in the middle school. And I also sit with the students, and my colleagues have sat with the students. We've had tours of the buildings. We have go through the buildings in terms of security and wellness. Wellness drove, for example, in the past couple of years, our efforts, not just in security that you see as hardware security or fencing, but our wellness of our students. We brought on a social worker that was not part of our special education department, but was a generalist in each of the buildings, driven by recommendation from the wellness committee. It's the best way I can describe the functions of the committee and what we like to do in terms of where we head with them.
Bob, exactly a year ago, Bob, you and I a year ago went teach cafeteria, if you recall. That was a year ago, February now, and inspected.
Yeah.
Looks like our last one is a two-part question. I believe it's from Kerry Anderson. Any progress regarding increasing live teaching time in grades K through 6 for quarantine classes? And along with that, why do special area teachers not do live instruction?
Well, that has been worked on. And if that didn't happen, Karen Pitkin and I have talked about that in the elementary school. Each one of those teachers were addressed. Each one of those teachers had the opportunity last Saturday to come in and get their materials before that. I mean, that might have been 2 Saturdays ago, to get ready to go online, teach remotely. And there is the expectation special should teach. Okay. I met with the union again. That should happen. So if the teachers aren't doing it, you've got to tell the principal that it's not happening.
Just as an aside, it's not really on that topic, but just as a reminder, if you have had a suspicion and you send your child for a test, you really shouldn't let the child come to school. The effect of that is we end up quarantining an entire class, teacher, aide, and lunch aide, because if you suspect it, keep the child home. This is just smart in terms of these times. When we get a report every day about the number of COVID positives, what our quarantine effect, and what we look at is what is the quarantine effect? Because it's not just that student, it's this effect on the student in their classroom, in their building, and how that affects the overall operation. Students then end up being sent home and quarantined. Let's not get into the fact that you also then turn on to, you don't know what the comorbidities of your fellow students are in the class, their parents, or who's at home. It's not thinking about your neighbors. It's not thinking about what we should be doing as a community. Just as an aside, that affects not just the classroom, but people's health down the line.
I'm glad you brought that up, Bob. That's happened more than once. We've had kids sent into school on Monday. They were sick over the weekend. They're waiting for the test results and send the child home. Right.
Thank you so much for all of your questions. They were spot on, most appreciative. These are difficult times. Before I entertain a motion, I want to thank everyone for their time. I wish them safety. I wish them well to their families. And thank you for your participation. I'll entertain a motion.
Bob,
yes.
I just one thing I just wanted to add.
Go ahead.
I meant to, to discuss this before. The Mount Sinai community lost a valued member. Not only he's next chief of the Mount Sinai Fire Department, Jamie Baldessari, but he was also a former trustee here of the Mount Sinai School Board a number of years ago. So he had come down with COVID. It's not known exactly what his demise was from, but I just wanted to let people know that there are people in this community that were affected by this. So it's not just on TV. And this is a man who served this community bravely for 26 years and had just retired from his occupation and unfortunately is not with us. So I just wanted the community to know his name, Jamie Baldessari, ex-chief in the Mount Sinai Fire Department, former trustee, spent a lot of his life volunteering for this community. So thank you.
Thank you, Pete, for sharing that. May I have a motion to adjourn for the evening?
So moved.
Thank you, Ed. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rob. All in favor indicate by aye.
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 Thank you again, all.
Have a good night.
And thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Good night. Stay
Good
safe.
night.
Thanks. Good night.
Stay safe. Thank you.
Everybody.